How's it going? Thad Brown here with you on the Endgame Thursday, February the 5th. We heard from all of the Bills' new coordinators today. You're going to hear from me about those coordinators. Jim Leonhard, attacking defense. Bills fans will love to hear it. Pete Carmichael with a really cool story about the growth of Joe Brady. We're also going to talk about Josh Allen taking some flack nationally from an ESPN analyst. That caused some waves on social media yesterday. So we'll hit on that as well. We'll also preview the Super Bowl, what my pick is for Patriots and Seahawks. Full show, as always, here on Rochester First. Let's start, though, like I said, with the coordinators. It was day one for Jim Leonhard and Pete Carmichael and Jeff Rodgers, the special teams coach. And Leonhard is the guy that everybody wants to hear from. He's the one that's going to be essentially the head coach of the defense, right? He's going to be the one who's going to handle that side of the ball. Now, Joe Brady did say today, he said, I don't have a side of the ball. I'm going to be involved everywhere. And while I think that's an admirable way to go into your tenure here as the head coach of the Bills, the truth is that he still is the offensive coordinator. And he's certainly going to lean more in that direction, if only because that's his expertise. He did say he's going to be involved in meetings, spending time in the offseason, understanding what's going on, making sure the vision is the same, all that stuff. But Jim Leonhard's going to be the guy. He's going to be the one in charge of what this defense does on a day-to-day and week-to-week basis. Now, we'll see. Maybe Joe Brady gets more involved than you expect, but especially for a first-year head coach, it'd be kind of a shock if Joe Brady is heavily involved on defense because he's still the one that has to call plays. But Bills fans should not fret because all the fans out there that were tired of Sean McDermott's more conservative, drop guys back, keep things in front of you, make teams drive the ball 12, 13, 15 plays down the field. Jim Leonhard gave you the words you want to hear, that this is going to be the kind of defense that is very much not going to be that.
We're going to be an attacking defense up front, in the back end. We're going to attack the football. You know, that's the biggest stat in football is turnovers. So we're going to be aggressive. We're going to fly around. We're going to communicate. We're going to play well together, right? It is team defense, but we're going to cause issues for offense, and we're going to force them to react to us, right? I don't want to counterpunch, you know.
So Leonhard said all the right things today. Leonhard said exactly what you want to hear if you're looking at a brand new defensive coordinator, a guy who hasn't done the job before. Had a lot of interesting things to say in terms of the way he's come up through the ranks as a defensive coordinator. I asked him a question about the fact that his first 10 years of being in pro football, while a lot of coaches are usually doing things like being grad assistants in colleges or quality control guys in the NFL, the coach that essentially gets the head coach a cup of coffee. While all that was happening, Leonhard was playing football for 10 years. And one of the things he said he learned from that was by kind of going with Rex Ryan's 3-4 scheme, or actually being in that scheme multiple years with multiple teams and multiple staffs, because he played for, I think, 4 different teams as he was during his 10 years in the NFL. He learned how to explain it to teammates, what to do, how to be that communicator, how to be that example, letting other guys know where they should be. So while other coaches might have gotten some coaching training, again, being the super junior guy on a staff, Leonhard got that training just being a player, being the player who knew what he was talking about, following different coaches around the NFL, following different schemes around the NFL. He also talked about the fact he comes from a coaching family. So this was, before he was even a player, this was kind of what he was always, being trained to do. And the other thing that really stood out is how respectful he was of Sean McDermott. He said a couple different times today that that he has a different lens in terms of how he looks at defense than what was here the previous 8 years. And I said, well, look, how much of a different lens is that? And in answering that question, Leonhard said a whole lot more about how good a job Sean McDermott has done, what Bobby Babich has done, the foundation they have laid here in Buffalo, than he did about anything different that he wants to do. Now, look, he made it clear, and Joe Brady did too, that this is going to be a different scheme. There's going to be changes. There's going to be a lot of things that are new. And part of that is going to happen no matter what coach you have. If the Bills had brought any new coach in, there was going to be different ways to look at things, different schemes. I think there will be more going from 4-3 to 3-4. And Leonard did talk about the differences between those two general styles of defense and how they're not as different as they used to be. He said they're more fluid in terms of the different things you might do. And in fact, Pete Carmichael might have had the best explanation, the Bills' new offensive coordinator, about what 3-4 and 4-3 mean today. What Carmichael said as an offensive coordinator is that maybe 15, 20 years ago, you get ready for a team and they either did A or B. But now you get ready for a team and it's like they do 20% of A, 19% of B, 15% of C. So there isn't the absolute difference or the super significant difference between a 3-4 defense and a 4-3 now than there was 15 or 20 years ago. But don't get me wrong, there's a difference. And this is going to be a process. And that was talked about a couple different times today about there's going to be new players and figuring out. Jim Leonard had a big conversation with Brandon Beane either today or yesterday. I forget what day it was, but recently about the different ways he wants to go about playing defense. And again, that's going to be a standard thing no matter who the guy is. But this scheme is going to be different enough that it's going to require probably more changes than just bringing in a guy to run a 4-3 style defense would have been. But it's going to be a change no matter what, no matter who is in here. So Leonard, I think, hit all the right buttons. He talked about the defense evolving. He said, look, you might see things that are a whole lot different even in year 2 than year 1. And again, I think a lot of that is natural too. But every time he brings that up, I couldn't help but think of the fact that, well, you're running a 3-4. The old defense was a 4-3, that this might take a little while. And I don't think anyone with the Bills today tried to sell anyone on this is going to be a quick fix. It's going to be a process. Even if everybody knows what the expectations are. Jim Leonard didn't shy away from that. Joe Brady has not shied away from that at all. But I do think a good chunk of the theme today was that this is going to be a while. It's going to be a process. It's going to be a change. And again, part of that is going to happen no matter who the new coach is. But I think with Jim Leonard going this defense, there's going to be a little more of a significant change when it comes to what the Bills want to do. But Jim Leonard's a good guy to talk with. He's an impressive young coach. He was impressive when he was here with the Bills. You know, the 3 guys that I went up to talk with today, I was telling people that maybe didn't cover the team back when Jim Leonard played here nearly 20 years ago, that this is a guy you want to talk to. This is a guy that you're going to be interested to hear from. And we got all of that today. We got a guy who was thoughtful in terms of how defenses evolve, what it's going to be like in Buffalo. He talked about how it was good for him to be back here. This is actually his 3rd stint here. He opened up the press conference by saying 3rd time's the charm, because he played with the Bills in 2013 for a cup of coffee after the 3 years he had. I think it was 06, 07, 08. And he talked about how it's been a familiar return for him. He knows generally where things are. He knows where his office is. He joked that a couple times he might have got lost. But Jim Leonard knows what it's going to be like to be in Buffalo. He knows what the fan base thinks of this team, what the team means to the fan base. So Jim Leonard, in terms of as a coordinator, as a leader, I thought I was going to be impressed, and he lived up to the hype. And if you want to go check that out, I'm sure the full press conference is available at rochesterfirst.com. It'll be perhaps on this channel too, Rochester First streaming. There are places you can go find Jim Leonard's full 20-minute discussion or so. And he hit all the right notes, said all the right things. I think that this franchise is still quite cognizant of how Sean McDermott was treated. And there was a desire to make sure that whatever damage was done by the Pagula Bean press conference was, I don't want to say corrected, but certainly not added to. So I think Jim Leonard did a good job on day 1. And keep in mind, Leonard was a guy that the Bills were going to have to chase a little bit. He was wanted in a number of different places. And he talked about that today too, and also explained why he chose Buffalo and this job as opposed to some of the other ones where he could have ended up.
very familiar with the organization, with the people, the fans. That was the biggest sell, knowing how close this team is, really to getting to that ultimate goal of playing in the Super Bowl, and having played them the last couple of years, just understanding enough about what this roster is and what I feel like it can be. But it was a wild ride for a couple of weeks, having a lot of conversations, and I'm excited to get to this position right now talking to you guys.
I think he's happy. I think it's a job. This is a job this guy's built for. You know, like he said, he was a guy who grew up in a coaching family, and his career is fascinating because, like I said earlier, he didn't have to do a lot of the underling coaching stuff that most guys have to do. He did 1 year as a position coach at Wisconsin, basically got promoted to coordinator right away, was a coordinator there for 6 seasons, then came to the NFL. And he talked today, too, about how much he appreciated his time in Denver, because in Denver, he wasn't the coordinator. That was Vance Joseph running that show. So he was, I don't remember his exact title, I think passing game coordinator and maybe defensive backs coach. Either way, it was more of a supporting job for him and something he had never done. So he felt he had gained some good expertise from that as well. So I think Bills fans will be happy with Jim Leonhard. I think you're going to like, generally, until the guy loses a game, Bills fans are going to be a huge fan of Jim Leonhard, because he's very thoughtful, he's very smart, and something that I saw even 20 years ago. So today hit all the marks for Jim Leonhard as a press conference. Even in addition, he got a question about, so was the Brandon Cooks play a catch? Because he's just coming from the Broncos, right? And Leonard's like, no, it was not a catch, because we are still in the 2025 season, so I am still technically a Broncos guy. And he's like, next week after the Super Bowl's over, ask me again. So he even handled that pretty well. Jim Leonhard did all the things that you would want to get out of a guy who, he's not the head coach. And in coordinators don't live a super public life. I think coordinator is a nice line to draw when you want to distinguish between the average fan that likes the Bills mainly because it's a big thing with either the people you live with or the people you work with, and aren't dialed into the day-to-day workings of how we're going to get this receiver open against this coverage. Why is our defensive line not getting pressure? The people who are dialed into the football, the more hardcore fans, I think that's where you start to pay attention to who the coordinators are, what they do, what they say. And those people who are going to see Jim Leonhard on a more regular basis, I think are going to be more impressed. I think they're going to be pretty impressed with him. He's a good hire. He's a smart hire. Even if today, like I've talked about last week or earlier this week, that this is going to be a process for the Bills defense. Don't expect things to go right for the Bills tomorrow or even September, October, November. This is going to be a little bit of a while, I think, before the Bills figure out exactly what they want to be on defense. And Joe Brady talked about it today too, that he wants this defense they're going to try and build a defense, and then they want the scheme to fit the players. He doesn't want the players to fit the scheme. He wants the scheme to fit the players. That's all well and good, but there are ways that coaches want to go about things. And the way that Jim Leonhard has gone about things in the past is significantly different than what the Bills have done the last couple years. So expecting the Bills to build that in one offseason is probably too much. Now, as the transition happens between the players that Sean McDermott wanted and the players that Jim Leonhard wanted, what Joe Brady said today was, we want a scheme that fits the players. So you might get more of an in-between scheme for the 2026 season, which is fine, because Leonhard's one of his strengths at Wisconsin was running more of a hybrid 3-4, of adjusting, of figuring out different ways to use guys. And it was so good that NFL coaches were studying what Leonhard was doing. And that's not a shock, because the way strategies work in football these days, most of the time, the things that guys figure out in high school and college trickle up to the NFL and not the other way around. I think there's more innovation at the lower levels, if only at the beginning, because there's just more teams. You need more ways to stand out. And the NFL, I think there's probably a motivation in the NFL to be more conservative, to do what everybody else is doing, because you know it works. If you do something in the NFL that's wild and off the board and it doesn't work, you're done. I think at college, if you're, at South Dakota State, you can try something a little more unusual. Now, Leonard coached at Wisconsin, which is certainly not South Dakota State, but I still think that that idea holds to a degree that, and it's not just about trying things different on defense too. You're responding to things because the college game and the high school game is so more wide open. Defenses had to adjust from what NFL schemes were doing to be able to combat that. You can't play the NFL's pro style defense in college against a spread offense because you're going to get passed around all day long. So colleges, defenses in college had to figure out how to deal with that. And then as they adjust and as the spread game moves up to the offense, to the NFL level, well, then NFL defenses go back to college and say, hey, how did you guys figure this out? And they start doing that stuff. So that's the general 3,000-foot view of how defenses and offenses keep adjusting and evolving from one level to the next. And what the Bills have in a defensive coordinator right now was a guy who was pretty darn good at adjusting at the college level. So this year in particular, but just defense in general, as the Bills evolve their personnel from what Sean McDermott wanted to what Jim Leonard wanted, they probably would be better off this year with, Leonard might be able to do a little better job this year of managing that adjustment because of how familiar he is with all the things that he had to adjust to when he was at Wisconsin. Now, like I said, this was coordinators of all three phases of the game talked to the media today. So that meant talking with Pete Carmichael, who is the new offensive coordinator. Now, Carmichael was the OC under Sean Payton for 13 seasons in New Orleans. But as I'm sure you're aware, Sean Payton called all the plays while he was the head coach of the Saints. So I think the immediate question is, what the heck does Pete Carmichael do? So we kind of got that answer today without asking him day to day, like, so Monday at 4:00, what's your job going to be? On a big picture point of view, what the Bills want and what Joe Brady wants from Pete Carmichael is the ability essentially to keep the train on the tracks, right? To keep things moving the way Joe Brady wants them. Because Joe Brady is going to be in charge of creating the offense, creating the game plan, getting ready to play call. And now Brady said today that Carmichael, when he gets ready for this job, he prepares as if he's going to play call himself. But the primary job, I think, from trying to read what these guys said today, is that when Brady has to go do head coaching stuff, whether it's dealing with the defense, talking to the media, talking to sponsors, business stuff, whatever, all the CEO stuff that a head coach has to do, what Carmichael's job is to keep the message consistent, keep saying what Joe Brady is saying in the meeting rooms, even if Joe Brady's not there. And clearly, as we talked about on Monday, if Sean Payton thought Carmichael was good at this job, or good enough at this job to keep him on board for 13 seasons, and then to bring him to Denver and to do something similar for the past 2 seasons, then Carmichael must be fairly proficient at this particular job. I did think it was kind of weird that Brady said, well, he's going to prepare to call the plays same as me. Well, to me, the skeptic is saying, why is he doing the same work that you're doing, buddy? Like, if why are we having a coach here that's going to do, if you're getting ready to call the plays, he's getting ready to call the plays. It doesn't seem like the most efficient use of everybody's time. I know that Brady is trying to point out that Carmichael has the same level of offensive knowledge and certainly brings extra thoughts to the table, extra brain power, for lack of a better term. But I understand the overall job. And the overall job is Joe Brady runs the offense. And then Pete Carmichael keeps things going the same direction as what Joe Brady wants, even when Joe Brady's not around. And I mean, we can sit here and debate about the value of that, like we talked about earlier this week and also on BKL Nightly. I don't know if you bring Pete Carmichael in and expect him to have a overt impact on the football team. Pete Carmichael's not going to change how the Bills operate offensively or likely come up with some brand new scheme that's going to totally flummox the Patriots in the middle of December, week 15, a big division game and all that stuff. His job is, and the way I described it earlier this week was kind of like handling the paperwork. It's more than that. And I think the thing that was learned today about Carmichael that best lends itself to talent in this particular realm, or ability in this particular realm, is his work as a communicator. This is a guy that knows how to talk to players, knows how to move the message from point A, which is the head coach, to point B, which is the offense, and does it pretty well. And again, if Sean Payton thought enough of this guy to want to work with him for 15 seasons, then he must be fairly good at his job. So I think that's the short answer on what Pete Carmichael brings when it comes to being a part of this offense and being the offensive coordinator. Now, the most interesting thing that Pete Carmichael talked about today was a story when Joe Brady was working with the Saints. And Brady was there from 2017 to 2018. And the story that Carmichael talked about was from the offseason between 2017 and 2018, when during the offseason, this is not totally out of the realm, apparently Ed Orgeron at LSU called the Saints and wanted the Saints to basically give the LSU coaches a primer on some NFL thoughts. Like I said, everybody's trying to share ideas all the time, learn from each other. So LSU calls, and they want to get a little education from the Saints. And the way Carmichael told the story, so it's Ed Orgeron. He says, hey, can you come down and talk to us about offense? And then also, could you bring a pro personnel guy down? And then, hey, could you have someone talk to us about RPOs? And what Carmichael said to Brady was, in a meeting, Sean Payton and Carmichael and Drew Brees would all be talking, and Brady would just be there, head down, taking notes. And when they asked Brady to contribute, his ability to envision the offense and discuss it was just ridiculously clear. Like, he could distill things in a way that wowed Payton and Carmichael, even as Brady was a brand new coach in the NFL. So when LSU called and wanted someone who could talk about RPOs, Carmichael thought Brady would be the best choice for that. And I'll let Carmichael pick up the story from here.
That first offseason in New Orleans, I got a call from Ed Orgeron. He says, hey, will you come down and speak to our staff? And I want you to speak about red zone. I said, yeah, sure, I'll come. And he said, hey, can you bring a pro personnel guy that can talk about like how you guys evaluate talent and like what you're looking for? And do you have anybody in there that can talk about RPOs? And I was like, well, we got a young guy, because it wasn't something that we were doing in New Orleans at the time. And we went down to LSU. I did my little bit with the offensive staff. The pro personnel guy did his thing, and then all of a sudden it was his turn to talk. And when I tell you, the whole building was in there, and I was kind of like, oh, we were just the opening act for this guy, for this rock star. And I'm telling you, I started taking notes, just listening to him talk, and just, I mean, you knew early on that this guy was going to be pretty good.
I'll never forget as I kind of approached that as a potential interview, not as an interview, but like this is my opportunity to get in front of, some of the great minds of in our game. I'm just a coaching assistant, right? And I'll never forget, I got in the car after, and Pete Carmichael looked at me and was like, that guy's probably going to hire you, and then pretty shortly.
Pretty cool story, right? Pretty cool to see Joe Brady, the young Joe Brady, kind of wowing people when he was a kid. It's like the first scene of a movie about the great athlete or the great superhero that overcomes. That was like the origin story, right? And look, I would think that most talented coaches, especially coaches that are getting head coaching jobs before they're 40, all have some story like that, to where, like I said, where you saw the superpower kind of developing at a young age, and to where he's taken people who have significantly more experience and or expertise and impressing them with his youthful wisdom. I would think a lot of coaches have that story, right? But still, the fact that Joe Brady has one of those, I think if you're a Bills fan, you feel pretty good about it, because you can see that this guy that you are banking your Josh Allen prime years on at least showed clear signs years ago that he was a unique dude. And Joe Brady is the youngest head coach in the NFL for this season. That already makes him pretty unique. He's done a good job as an offensive coordinator. Granted, when you have Josh Allen, it's hard not to do a good job. But I think Joe Brady has certainly checked a number of boxes enough of the boxes to make you feel optimistic about how he's going to do and what his future holds as the head coach of the Buffalo Bills. And this was just another example why. So I got a kick out of that story. I thought you guys would too. Again, I'm not going to sit here and say that Joe Brady is going to be good because back in 2017, he blew away Ed Orgeron in an offseason press conference, but it was still a cool story, a cool thing to hear. The third coach we heard from today was Jeff Rodgers. And let me tell you, I like Jeff Rodgers a lot. This is the most laid back, chill special teams coach I've ever met. Special teams coaches, in my experience, tend to be, I don't want to say a little off, but they're unique dudes because their football work is so different than what everybody else in the building, most everybody else in the building has to do. They practice by themselves a lot of the time. We were talking about like the kickers and holders and snappers, that kind of thing. And they have just a different approach to being a part of a team. And Rodgers talked about it too. He almost, first of all, he almost kind of shook his head and admitted, yeah, I kind of fell into this. This was he said being a special teams coach was not the plan. But he said it has worked for him because he enjoys the fact that he gets to work with the entire team. And it's something you don't really think about a lot. If you're an offensive coordinator, quarterbacks coach, O-line coach, you just work with that group, right? You just work with the offense or the O-line or your position group. Same thing for defense. But if you're the special teams coach, except for the quarterbacks, you work with everybody because you got offensive linemen and defensive linemen who are on field goal block, field goal protection. You've got defensive backs and linebackers who handle a lot of your coverage stuff, both on kickoff and on punts. You've got receivers and running backs who are heavily involved in the return game a lot of the time, if not also the coverage thing. So he likes the fact that he, at the end of the day, gets to work with everybody on the team. And then on top of that, this is me reading into it a little bit. He did talk about how on offense and defense, if you're either of those coordinators, you have meetings that are with a bunch of coaches, right? Because if you're on the offensive coordinator, you got to bring in the quarterback coach and the running back coach and the O-line coach and the receiver coach and the tight ends coach and the quality control coach and the assistant coaches from those positions. And you've got to run meetings with all those guys. Same thing goes on defense. If you're a special teams coach, you probably have one assistant and that's it. So you have a good amount of autonomy. So you kind of, I never really thought about the way Rodgers described it, but special teams coach sounds kind of fun now when you think about it, that you get to work with all the guys on the team. Now, you don't get to work with 100% of the guys on the team, but you have the full spectrum of rostered players to choose from, potentially, to be a part of what you're doing. So there's no limit. It's not just the linemen or the defensive backs or the corners. You get to work with everybody. And then on top of that, you don't have to come up with a consensus among 7 brains to execute a game plan. It's you and your assistant, which means it's probably just you. Sounds kind of fun, right? Sounds kind of interesting. And Rodgers is not a rah-rah, get you fired up kind of guy, but you could tell he's a lifer. This is his 17th straight year where he's going to be a special teams coach. He knows the ins and outs. He's wildly confident about what he's doing. Doesn't mean he's going to dominate, but there's no doubt when Jeff Rodgers walks into a room, he knows exactly what he wants to do when it comes to coaching special teams. And that confidence and that belief in what he's doing radiated through the press conference today. I have never been more excited to talk more with a special teams coach that the Bills have had. Not that Jeff Rodgers is going to be better than Chris Tabor or Heath Farwell or anybody else, but Rodgers in terms of being a straight shooter, in terms of just having a real feel to him. This is a guy that you 100% could sit down in a bar, have drinks with, and he would feel the same as any other dude that you hang out with on a regular basis as it is. Just very real, and again, very laid back. I'm a big fan of Jeff Rodgers after talking to him today. We'll see where it goes special teams-wise. His stuff hasn't been super great or dominant in terms of his special teams, but a fascinating guy to talk to, and I was just really, really impressed with the vibe from Jeff Rodgers after day one in Orchard Park. All right, let's take a break here. When we come back after this, so yesterday there was an ESPN personality who brought up the Josh Allen can't win the big one discussion. I got thoughts on it. I posted some on X yesterday. We will talk about that after a break. Plus, we will also break down Super Bowl number 60. I'm Thad Brown. The kids call this station Rock One. You might also know it as Rochester First. This is the Endgame, and we'll be back right after this. Thad Brown back here with you on the Endgame on a Thursday. Want to remind you, as always, that later on tonight, as we do every single week of the year, it is BKL Nightly, Monday and Thursday, right here, 8:30 p.m. every single week, breaking down the Bills all off-season long. Tonight, we're going to have a whole lot more on the coordinator press conferences today, what those three guys had to say, and the direction going forward here in Orchard Park under Joe Brady. So yesterday, Cam Jordan was on ESPN's First Take. And to be fair here, I'm sure he spoke for more than 30 seconds or 40 seconds. But the 40 seconds that he talked about Josh Allen were something that got the attention of Bills Mafia and a number of us in the media. And the short story on what Cam Jordan had to say was essentially that Josh Allen proved what I thought about him, that he can't win the big games, that he can be Superman and do all these things in the regular season, but when it comes to the postseason, that is not a spot where Josh Allen is going to succeed or is not going to be able to win the big game. And, my take on it, and I posted this in X yesterday, goes like this. If someone out there wants to say that Josh Allen can't win the big game, I think there's merit to that because Josh Allen hasn't won the big game, not the championship level games. He's won big games. He's obviously beaten the Chiefs a number of times in the regular season. The win over Jacksonville in the playoffs, even though it was a first-round game, that's still a pretty big win, especially the way it went down where Allen had to come from behind a couple different times in the fourth quarter. So he's won big games, but he hasn't won the championship level games, the real big games, the legacy defining games. So if someone wants to have that take that Josh Allen can't win the big game, I'm not going to roll my eyes at it because the facts are Josh Allen has not won the big game. But Cam Jordan went on later in the clip at least, and you can check out this clip on my X feed, Thad Brown 7, to talk about Lamar Jackson. And hey, you've got Zay Flowers now and this and that. And there was no mention in the clip, at least, of Lamar Jackson being addressed the same way as Josh Allen. And that's where I have a big problem with what Cam Jordan talked about on First Take yesterday, at least again in the clip that was going around social media. If you're going to hold Josh Allen to account for not winning the big game, like I said, there's merit to that because he hasn't won the big game. But you got to hold Lamar Jackson to the same account. Both guys have been wildly talented and productive and successful in the regular season. Both guys have won MVP awards. Both guys have earned high seeds in the playoffs. Both guys have been on teams that easily could have made to a Super Bowl, and both guys have failed to do so. You want to quibble about which one is better and sit there and break down numbers and look at total touchdowns and QB rating and QBR and say one guy is better than the other, fine. But in terms of the big picture of can they win the big one, if you think one can't, then you think the other can't too. There's no separating those two guys. For me, I would tell you that I think Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson can win the big one. They certainly have the ability to do that. Both guys have played at a level in enough big games and in playoff games to where they could succeed at that level and win championship games. Josh Allen, I think, has done it better. His numbers have been better in the postseason. But if you want to put a bar out about this is the bar you have to clear in order to win conference championships and Super Bowls, both Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen have cleared that bar a number of times. But especially from the Josh Allen point of view, this is the criticism that he is going to have to take. Now, we talked earlier this year, especially when Patrick Mahomes got hurt, about kind of the changing of the guard when it comes to the quarterback hierarchy in the NFL. Because forever, Patrick Mahomes was number one, and that was without a question. But over the last couple of years, Mahomes has not played nearly as well. Allen has won an MVP, and his play over the last 3 seasons has statistically been better than what Mahomes has been, even if Mahomes has a Super Bowl championship and 2 AFC championships under his belt in that time. So right this second, if you were going to list the quarterbacks 1 through 32, I think you put Josh Allen number 1. And this is separate of Mahomes being hurt. Obviously, it doesn't help. But just the ability, the production, the play that we have seen over the last 3 seasons, even though Mahomes' first 3-4 seasons are significantly and noticeably different than what Josh Allen has done, the more recent history says that Josh Allen is the better quarterback. But when you're the number 1 quarterback, you got to win some of these big games. You can't just say, oh, well, the defense gave up 30 whatever points. And you know, they're asking Josh Allen to do too much. That can't be the company line when it comes to the number 1 quarterback in the NFL. If you're the best quarterback, you got to win some of these big games. So it's not unfair for people to criticize Josh Allen for not being able to win the big game. He's got to do it. If Josh Allen plays his whole career losing in divisional rounds and AFC championship rounds and doesn't ever get to a Super Bowl, then there's no way you look at him as the number 1 quarterback in the NFL. And that rap of being that moniker of not being able to win the big game, that's going to stick. So he's got to, the only way that Josh Allen can be considered a quarterback that can win the big games is winning the big games. And as people have kind of gone back and forth with me on this on X, I've been going back through the last few seasons. One thing I found very interesting when it comes to the 3 games where the Bills were eliminated. So that'd be Denver this year, Chiefs in the AFC Championship last year, Chiefs at home in Orchard Park the year before. Those 3 games where if you ask a Bills fan, why did the Bills lose those games? The number 1 answer is going to be defense. You're going to look at 27 points allowed, 32 points allowed, 33 points allowed, and say, well, you're asking Josh Allen to do too much. And that's not wrong. There is no world in which the defense played well in any of those 3 games. But the thing I found a little bit interesting is that when it comes to the end of those games, in the 4th quarter, when it's the time when a quarterback who can win the big game should be winning the big game, the Bills' defense has actually played a little bit better than Josh Allen. The Bills' defense this year, keep in mind, after the Bills took a lead, right? They took a lead early in the 4th quarter with the touchdown pass to Dalton Kincaid. What did the defense do after that? They immediately got a stop. They got Denver off the field and got Buffalo the ball back with the lead. And Josh Allen could have driven the team to a touchdown, would have put them up 8. And yeah, maybe Denver is able to score to tie the game there, but you certainly make it more difficult than only being up 4. But Allen couldn't get that done. So the first 2 drives after the Bills take a lead this year, defense succeeds, Allen fails. Offense fails, right? Now, the next drive after that, defense fails. And again, the defense has not been great. Allen could have and had opportunities to lead the Bills to a touchdown. He does get a field goal there. So I guess we'll call that a success. And then in overtime, the defense immediately gets a stop to start out the overtime. So no matter what you think of the defense, giving up 33 points. In the 4th quarter and in overtime, when the Bills had chances to win the game, the defense got stops on 2 out of 4 drives. And don't get me wrong, I'm not telling you that's good. But Josh Allen only succeeded on 1 of those 3 drives, and that success was a tying field goal after he missed a throw to Dawson Knox that could have won the game. So in this game this year, at the end of the game, when it mattered, the defense was better. Neither was good, but the defense was better. And if you go back to the home game, so after the 2023 season, the 27-24 loss to the Chiefs, in that game, the Chiefs take the lead in the 3rd quarter, and then they also have the ball on the doorstep to go up 10 after the ill-advised fake punt idea, the Bills defense forces a fumble and then later gets a punt. So that's another spot where the defense succeeded 2 different times. Let me go back and check this out here. I'm going to fire this thing up. Because the defense takes all kinds of garbage from Bills fans. And again, it's mostly deserved. This has not been a defense that has done anything close to good when it comes to the playoffs. But when you look at this game against the Chiefs, 27-24 loss. So the Chiefs take the lead right at the end of right at the start of the fourth quarter, 27-24, right? So the Bills immediately, the offense goes 3 and out. They fail. Defense forces a fumble on the fake punt. Offense goes 3 and out again. Defense turns around and forces a punt. So with the Bills down 3, the next 4 drives are 2 fails by the offense and 2 successes by the defense, one being a wildly good success, saving the Bills points after they tried to fake a punt inside their own 30-yard line. And then the third drive is Allen getting a shot at the field goal that Tyler Bass misses, and the defense not being able to force a 3 and out on the punt. So, again, as much as the defense takes flack for allowing all these points, when it mattered this year and 2 years ago, the defense was getting stops in the fourth quarter, and the offense was the one that was failing. And yeah, Allen did drive the Bills to get a field goal attempt that would have tied the game. So more or less did his job. He's not leading them to game-winning touchdowns. He's not doing the things you need to do to win the big games. And even the AFC Championship last year, at the end of the game, Chiefs take the lead again early in the fourth quarter, I think it was. So let's see, Bills were up 1. The way that game worked out, Bills are up 1. They get the fail on the 4th and 1 QB sneak that everybody hated because of replay and all that stuff. Chiefs turn around and score and go up by 7. Touchdown plus 2-point conversion. Josh Allen does lead a successful game-tying drive there, but again, he failed at the end, not being able to match the field goal the Chiefs drove on. Defense didn't do much there at all. I think they got 1 punt in there somewhere. But if you go through all of these drives, so 9 drives, I think, is the total for both teams in the last 3 games where the Bills got eliminated. The defense is getting stops. The defense is forcing turnovers. And the offense is not holding up their side of the bargain. This is not to excuse the defense, because the reason the Bills are still losing these games, despite how, finger quotes, well, the Bills are playing in the fourth quarter, is because of how bad the defense is playing the other 3 quarters of those games. And against Denver, how they gave up the go-ahead touchdown in the fourth quarter and then the go-ahead field goal in overtime. So it's not like the defense is great and we should be patting Sean McDermott on the back and what a travesty it is that the defensive coordinator is gone. No. But going back to the point that Cam Jordan made, that Josh Allen can't win the big one, there is a bit of a pattern developing here of when it matters, the Bills' offense is what is failing them. That doesn't mean the offense is failing them throughout the game, because, again, there are plenty of points being scored in the other 3 quarters of these games to where they should be able to win. But when it does matter, in the fourth quarter and in overtime, when it is game-deciding time, your offense and your quarterback in Buffalo have done worse than the defense has done. So if someone out there wants to say that Josh Allen can't win the big one, this to me is evidence number 1. And this to me is at least enough evidence to validate the opinion, even if, like I said, I don't agree with it. But Josh Allen can clearly win the big one. I still think Josh Allen is the best quarterback in the NFL. The best quarterback in the NFL has the ability to win the big one, even if he hasn't done it already. But it is not ridiculous to sit here and say that Josh Allen can't win the big one, because the last 3 years he's had chances and has not gotten it done, to the point where the defense that has been lambasted left and right is doing better than Josh Allen in the offense in the fourth quarters of these games where the Bills are getting eliminated. Look at what the Bills did this year in the Jacksonville game. When Josh Allen and the offense scores points, they win games. In that game, the offense was succeeding in the fourth quarter over and over. In the 3 games where the Bills did not advance, where they got eliminated the last 3 years, it was the offense that was not succeeding at the end. So that, to me, gives at least some reasonableness to the idea Josh Allen can't win the big one, even if I would say I think he can. Speaking of the big one, Super Bowl Sunday is on the way. It is the Patriots and the Seahawks. I know much to the chagrin of many Bills fans. I don't really feel like there's a great argument for the Patriots winning this game. I think you can make a good argument for them being competitive. Number one, I think Mike Vrabel's done a pretty good job as a coach this year. I think his staff is more experienced than Mike McDonald's staff in Seattle. And yes, the Patriots have had an all-time easy run to a Super Bowl, a historically bad schedule, a playoff run that included a Chargers team that had no offensive line left, a Texans team that had lost their star receiver, their only legitimate weapon on offense, and then obviously a Broncos team playing without its starting quarterback. It does not get any better than that. You cannot get a easier, more the railings are up. You know, if you're bowling and you put up the gutter guards so your 5-year-old doesn't throw the ball in the gutter, this was the Patriots season, was having the guardrails up and making it easy. But it's no gimme you go to a Super Bowl with all that. You still got to execute and figure it out. And Mike Vrabel's team did that all year long. You know, think about it. If they had slacked off at all, had taken one more misstep at all in the regular season, then it might have been the Bills who win the division, who catch that easier ride, as opposed to having to go on the road 3 weeks in a row. So give Mike Vrabel credit for that. And I think going into this Super Bowl, it is probably advantage Vrabel when it comes to overall preparation just because of the experience. Doesn't mean that Clint Kubiak and McDonald can't out X and O the Patriots for a game or any particular situation. I think there's a good chance they can. But if you want to say which of the 2 coaching staffs do I feel like is going to have their team better prepared in general, I'm going to side on the Patriots side. The other thing is that Patriots defense is legitimately good. They will be able, or should be able to, with Milton Williams and Christian Barmore in the middle of that defensive line, they should be able to take away a lot of what Seattle wants to do on the ground, because the Patriots have done that to a lot of teams all year long. Their run defense is excellent. The Bills found out in week 4, it's been really good all year. So the idea that Kenneth Walker is going to be able to run for like $150 and that Seahawks can dominate this game on the ground, to me, doesn't make much sense. And then let's play that out. So if the Seahawks are now one-dimensional and the Patriots have a much easier or many more opportunities to go after Sam Darnold on 3rd and long, I think there's a good chance you force Darnold into some turnovers, into some mistakes, into some sacks. And even down the field, yes, Jackson Smith and Jigba is one of the best receivers in the NFL, probably top 2 or 3. But the Patriots have Christian Gonzalez and Carlton Davis. Gonzalez especially can probably handle JSN enough times one-on-one. So when the Seahawks have the ball, the Patriots have a number of answers for what Seattle wants to do. And I think it'll make it pretty tough on the Seahawks being able to move the ball up and down the field. And I think that Patriots defense is certainly going to be, if the Patriots win this game, it's going to be about Seattle couldn't run the ball and Sam Darnold made mistakes. And the Patriots have the people, the depth, and the coaching on defense to force those kind of issues out of the Seahawks. The problem is the other side of the ball. Because as good as the Patriots defense is, the Seahawks defense is better and scarier and has better athletes and is more dangerous. And like I said, from an X and O point of view, not a general preparation point of view, is probably a better coached group. What Mike McDonald has done the last few years on defense in both Baltimore and Seattle is probably the best work in the league. And for whatever you think Seattle might not have offensively, yeah, the Patriots probably have the better quarterback in terms of what he's done this year. But when it comes to a Super Bowl level game, whatever doubts you have about Sam Darnold going into this game, and yeah, he led the NFL in turnovers this year, and I know he had a really good game against the Rams, but there are zero people who would be surprised if Sam Darnold threw 3 picks in this game. You can't look at Drake May and be any further confident about what he's going to do in this game. He has not looked very good in the playoffs. He's had one good year in the NFL. And yeah, he might win an MVP on that one good year. But as we pointed out a minute ago, it ain't like the Patriots have been going through all these great defenses all season long. I know Patriots fans will tell you about the great defenses they played in the playoffs, and the Chargers were really good, and the Texans are probably maybe a generational defense, and the Broncos, at least on paper, have good stats. And Drake May beat all those 2 teams, all 3 of those teams, and he actually really did a good job against the Texans, which was probably of the 3 the toughest assignment. But this is not a quarterback that has built up a ton of equity when it comes to succeeding at the highest levels. There's some there. He's had a good year, but you're not going to roll Drake May out in a Super Bowl and think, that's Joe Montana. He's been there and done that. He's going to be fine. So the Patriots don't have, even if they have an advantage at quarterback, and I think maybe they do by a little, if only because I might trust Drake May in his running ability a little more, that quarterback advantage is not huge. And then after that, what do you like about the Patriots offense significantly better than the Seahawks offense? Definitely not the offensive line, especially as banged up as Will Campbell has been the last few weeks. The receivers have players who can do things. We know Stephon Diggs can be effective. We know what Matt Collins can be. He's a solid role player who will make 3-4 plays a game for you. Keyshawn Boutte is fine. They've got decent tight ends. But if you're the Patriots, I think you would trade all that for Jackson Smith and Jigba and whatever in a heartbeat. And Kenneth Walker is a pretty dangerous runner the same way Travion Henderson is. But he's got a little more of a resume behind it. So you've got a Patriots offense that's probably not as good as the decent to significantly above average Seattle offense going against the better defense. I don't know how Drake May scores outside of hitting 3 or 4 deep balls in this game and making it easy to get up and down the field. Or, like I said, Sam Darnold turnovers. So I wouldn't be surprised if this game is something like 13-10 late in the third quarter. And it's close, and you feel like if the Patriots could get a couple things to bounce their way, maybe they steal the game. And then it's the Seahawks who force the big turnover, make the big play, get the big sack, and then just pull away late. The other part of this, too, is although Marcus Jones as a punt returner is pretty solid on the Patriots side, Rashid Shaheed and the Seattle special teams are the better of the 2 groups. So there just isn't enough for you to hang your hat on from the Patriots' point of view to feel good about picking them to win this game. I would imagine that outside of Boston, the predictions for this game will be 90+% Seattle's direction. I know the line is kind of held at 4.5, 5. I would be happy to lay that number. I wouldn't be surprised if New England covered it. I don't think the line is bad. But of the 2, I'm definitely laying the points with Seattle. Because there's a number, you get a Shaheed big play, you get JSN just doing the things he does, you get special teams hits, you get turnovers from, Drake May's taken a gazillion sacks in the postseason. There's all kinds of ways to look at this game and feel like, well, this is how Seattle could win this way, Seattle could do this, Seattle could just have the better game plan. Clint Kubiak's been awesome. He's going to be a head coach next year for a reason. There's all kinds of things that you feel good about with Seattle. And this kind of goes to how the league has been this year, because the NFC has been the better conference all year long. So it wouldn't be a surprise to see Seattle finish that off by burying the Patriots, the team that came out of the AFC. And the Patriots are a fine, deserving team. We talked about this a month ago when the playoffs started, that you took Buffalo and Jacksonville and Denver and Houston and New England. And if you drew any of those 5 names out of a hat, you could look at it and say, okay, I can see that as a Super Bowl team out of the AFC, but they don't really measure up to the Rams or the Seahawks. And maybe not even the Niners or the Eagles, frankly. And the Bills did just lose to the Philadelphia at home a month and a half ago. So everything is pointing Seattle's way. It wouldn't stun me to see New England pull it out, if only because you don't believe in the Seattle quarterback much more than you believe in the New England quarterback. But there are so many pieces, so many things pointing in Seattle's direction that I'm going to take the Seahawks. I think I'm going to go 30-13. And it won't be, I don't think Seattle's going to dominate all game long. I think you're going to be interested in this game after halftime. But I'll tell you this, if New England has the ball in the last 10 minutes of the game down by a score or less, I'd be surprised. I would lay that 4.5 points all the way up until, the end of I think by the end of the third quarter, Seattle will probably be covering that. And I know, the last thing Bills fans want to see is New England win another Super Bowl. I think most of football fandom would agree with that. I really don't care. It's not like Seattle. I think the Sam Darnold story is the most fun part of the Super Bowl. Seeing whether or not he can kind of complete that redemption arc from terrible and disposed of by the Jets, cycled through the Panthers and the Niners and the Vikings, dumped by a Vikings team that he won 14 games for last year, to finish that off with a Super Bowl. I think that is the easy rooting path for most neutral fans, which is funny because the Patriots are literally the underdog team. The Patriots are the nobody believes in us team. It's just, if the Patriots weren't the Patriots, if the Patriots were the Dolphins or the Jaguars, I think most of the football world would be fine to just root for Drake. Drake May and Mike Vrabel in different laundry is an easy rooting choice for most football fans. But wearing that team's uniform, I think people are going to have a problem with it. Looking forward to the game as always. Should be fun. We will talk about it on Monday. Thanks for joining me today on the Endgame. I'm Thad Brown. Keep watching Rochester First Year, but remember, call it Rock 1 if you want to be cool. And I will talk to you again Monday after Super Bowl 60. See you then.
Get the Rochester First streaming app today for everything you love from News 8 On Demand, plus exclusive shows you won't see anywhere else. Search ROC and download for free on Roku, Amazon Fire, and Apple TV.